Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another JP's Chalk Talk sessions. I hope everybody's well and safe. The goal of this channel is talking about and discussing, collaborating with experts and others in the industry. So today we have a special guest, and I will introduce him here in just a moment. But the goal of this channel is connecting, streaming, and delivering, right? When it comes to video and online streaming type capabilities, and we kind of look at the technologies, software, hardware, those that are doing it, maybe approaches that we can do things a little bit more efficiently. So I want to thank you for those that are returning to the channel. If you're currently a subscriber, I want to thank you. If you're not a subscriber, you can go ahead and basically go to my channel and subscribe there, and I'd be grateful, happy to have you as a subscriber. And if you ring that bell, you'll get notified when a video is posted as well. So I appreciate everybody's feedback. I've had some comments, and it really does make a difference when we talk about how do we build a more collaborative way. And especially with streaming, there's so many different kind of components to that. So it's been a terrific experience for me to discuss with others. So today I have Jason Thibeault from the Streaming Video Alliance. And Jason is the executive director. So let's go ahead and bring Jason in.
Hey, John.
Hey,
how you
Jason.
doing?
How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Thanks for joining with us. I know you've got a lot on your plate, a lot of things going on.
Oh,
So
always. Yeah.
I think it's kind of a never-ending cycle, I think, to be honest with you. So it's constantly one of those things that we try to take some items off the plate, and then other items get added back onto the plate. So it's
It
kind
is
of
literally the never dwindling to-do list. Yes.
So Jason, I appreciate your time and the opportunity to take time out of your busy schedule to come on and talk about the Streaming Video Alliance. You know, there were a lot of changes in 2020, no doubt, with the pandemic. And obviously, you kind of head up this alliance. Maybe just take a moment to introduce yourself and a little bit of your background, as well as what's the focus of the Streaming Video Alliance.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Jason Thibeault, right? As John introduced me so well. I'm the executive director of the Streaming Video Alliance. My background is kind of crazy. I have a graduate degree in literature. I've written books.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ended up in tech when I got out of grad school because if I wanted to finish up my doctorate in literature, I could get a job in Timbuktu, Iowa, and I kind of wasn't about that. So I went into tech, and I've been in the tech for the past 20 plus years. I was a serial entrepreneur. I've done 4 startups. I've raised a bunch of money. I've spent a bunch of money. I've nothing to show for it. Oops. Except some experience, like lots of experience. You get,
Yep.
10 years of business experience in a year of startup. So actually, one of my startups that I co-founded, DataZoom, is still running strong. And Diane Strutner, my co-founder, who's the CEO, is doing a fantastic job. And so
Oh, great.
that's exciting to see. I still do work with them. But so I've got, I worked at Limelight for about 8 years after a string of startups. When I was there, I did everything from marketing strategy to product management to evangelism. Wrote a bunch of patents, so I've got about 12 patents to my name now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just a crazy background. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's actually
that's pretty diverse.
yeah, it's great for the alliance because as the executive director, I have to wear a lot of hats. We're not a very big organization. We've only got 5 or 6 people on staff. We're we're growing. So when I came on board about 5 years ago, we were just around sort of the 20 member mark. I think we crossed the 90 member mark at the end of last year. So it's been a considerable amount of growth, since I've come on board, and with the help of the staff and a very, very good board, we've really accelerated and better defined what the Alliance does. So, the Alliance, like all sorts of organizations out there like IETF and SMPTE and SCUDDY, we are a, technology consortia. Where we differ is we don't standardize things. We feel that because streaming technology is moving so quickly and standards take about 2 to 3 years, it doesn't make any sense. By the time you put a standard in place, the technology's potentially already moved past it. So we focus on producing documents like best practices and specifications and functional requirements, and basically documents that are very tactical and operational and usable by folks in the streaming industry to solve very pertinent technology challenges that are right in front of them, like how do I better secure my streams? How do I scale my network better? How do I configure my caches with a better cache hit ratio? So it's all of those things together and more. But that's kind of where we're at now. Our alliance, those 90 member companies or so, span a lot of different parts of the ecosystem. We have network operators, we have content rights holders / OTT operators, we have lots of technology vendors, we have service providers like CDN. So it's a really great place to come and collaborate with others from the industry who you may not necessarily work with to solve some of these problems.
No, absolutely. I think that's and that's important though. I think that because a lot of people ask the question, like, what are the standards, if you will, of certain ways we approach a certain from a streaming video perspective. And I said, well, there really aren't standards. There's an agreement on an approach that we would take, right? And we would try to do that. And it kind of brings back to what I mentioned just previously, was about with 2020 and the pandemic and changes, the growth of the online video streaming industry, those that are individuals and just jumping into the streaming space, but those that really had to adopt a process within their organization horizontally, right? And in many different ways to be able to provide a connection point for with people as well as in the media entertainment space. I think you and I had a conversation talking about this previously, that there wasn't really a fundamental change in terms of technology as a whole, other than the massive growth that we've seen. Has there been any other developments over 2020 from the Alliance perspective with the members that you've seen you could focus on?
No, again, so the technology really was already moving along its path, right? We were already exploring things like WebRTC. Theo and Cinemedia had already launched, the HESP protocol. So there were new protocols, new codecs, all those things were already in play. They were already being tested. Streaming operators were already very good at scaling their networks and planning for capacity, and CDNs were obviously very good at ensuring that spikes could be met, and all of the consistency and resiliency was still there. We have one of our members is a big cable organization, and if you go to their website and you look at their data from 2020, it shows that all of the operators were doing fantastic, right? They had already been planning and building for this surge in streaming. And so we did very well. And the real, it wasn't necessarily a change. There was just now a lens on certain things, right? So the spotlight was on piracy. So how do you prevent pirates from stealing? I heard from one of my member companies who's in the security space that there's kind of a new thing that happens now. So pirates will create a streaming app for like iOS or Android devices that steals the stream from the legitimate app. And they'll put that app in the store. People will buy that app. They'll get the content they want. The app is slick. It looks great. It's really hard to shut it down. You got to go to the app store. You got to contact Apple or Android, like Google. Hey, shut that app down. That's stealing my content. So we didn't even know that happened. It was like, wow.
That's kind of...
So it's nefarious.
Absolutely.
It's like insidious. And so there's this, the lens has always been on piracy, but now it's even heightened. It's like, okay, pirates are being, creative and innovative in how they're taking content. We need to be, how do we adjust our processes? How do we adjust our workflow? How do we adjust things to make sure that we can stop that? So that was a kind of big emphasis for 2020. And we've seen it roll out into 2021. There's a very heightened, perspective and insight and look and diligence on security and security streaming. Some of the other things I guess that we could, really say is resiliency has come into play. I mean, moving into 2020, for example, for live streaming, we were all talking about latency, low latency, ultra low latency this, low latency that. But if you talk to a lot of the sports folks, if you talk to like NBC Sports or Fubo or DAZN, they were like, yeah, latency is, it's important. Low latencies, we want to make sure it's not, 45-second delay. But our real concerns are consistent experience. It's got to be like broadcast TV, right? We can't have lots of bitrate changes. We can't have lots of buffering. So we have to solve those problems first and then we'll start looking at latency. So I think 2020 saw a renewed prioritization of things like scalability, resiliency, consistency. How do we get to a place where you just turn the streaming service on and it works? And there's no interruptions. There's you're not at 1080p 1 second and then at 480 and then back to 1080. It's just
Right.
That's just not happening.
Right.
And obviously mobile is back. It's going to come back in the forefront for streaming. Obviously, the sort of demise of Quibi showed us that people were not watching mobile content while they were sequestered at home because they were in front of their TVs. I was like, why am I watching on my phone? I can watch on the TV. And not only that, I can cast it to the TV.
Exactly.
But as people start to get out and about again, mobile's going to come back into the picture, and we're going to start worrying about, okay, can these networks, like we've just built our architecture, handle scalability and resiliency to make sure it's a great customer experience. So I think we'll start to see that roll back in. But yeah, 2020 was really all about how do I build a bulletproof streaming service, period. And that may have meant experimenting and looking at some of the different technologies, but it was really about fine-tuning what they have now.
Absolutely. No, I think you bring up a great point, because that was another conversation I had with that I'll be posting in a video here shortly about Hub Entertainment, about wave 2 of the pandemic and some of the changes. But the behavior was people are sequestered at home. So they are watching on, you've seen the growth of in terms of smart TVs, other types of devices, and then maybe supplementing that with some kind of a linear type OTT type component. That could be a Roku, it could be Fire app, or Apple TV or whatever, and then they're consuming that through the application, through those services, to watch the content. And I think that's interesting, because I think a lot of people, a lot of times, that we're just keeping it, maintaining those apps, making sure that you're refreshing it with updated content, but also at the same time from an infrastructure. And I use the building concept of ensuring that we're doing the right placement of the furniture, and doing some other things that kind of help ensure that we're doing housekeeping, right? And I'm simplifying that in one perspective, because there's a lot of complexity when it comes to, appreciate what you said about from the technology perspective. From a technology perspective, if I'm thinking about the data center and all the various things that we have to manage from a technology perspective, we have to ensure that we're really doing that. And security was a big one, which I think you're right. And that's interesting. On a data point you brought up about that piece, it's almost like ghosting in certain aspects of certain behaviors. So I think as we kind of go into 2021, are there some goals that you see potentially that you can share in terms of for this year? Because I think it's kind of a strategic planning process of, okay, we kind of made it through 2020. We provided that resiliency. We did all these things. Now what, right? As the new norm continues, do you see something there that to focus on and continue on maybe what it already was in 2020?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great question, right? Yeah, so there's definitely places to focus in 2021. I think, at the end of 2020, we saw sports return, right? So there's now an increased emphasis back on live streaming. So we'll be publishing a document soon about best practices for reducing live stream latency, and it's not just your CDN, it's all of the points in the workflow that cause latency. Everything from how fast your encoder's running to how quickly your DRM is applied. Yeah. It's just all of those points that can introduce latency. And so that doc will be coming out, and then I think they're going to move on to sort of a lab. That live streaming working group is going to move on to a lab situation where they're going to test all those assumptions in a lab and then come back and make changes to the best practices that they had suggested in the original document. So we're seeing lots of emphasis on that. As an organization, we're looking at scope, right? So are there places where the industry can be applied that's not yet within the workflow? For example, let's say edge computing. We know that 5G is going to be important. We know that MEC, mobile edge computing, is going to be important. So the question becomes, is from a workflow perspective, what can I stick out in the edge? And the thing to date has really been about virtualizing elements of the workflow into the cloud. And it's okay. You're using cloud resources, so you have some elasticity and scalability, but you're not cloud native. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think there's going to start to be an exploration of sort of what is cloud native, and that's where you can get to truly virtualized resources out into the
Mm-hmm.
edge, like as Lambda functions. And so you no longer even have it's a serverless piece of the workflow. So there's lots of stuff happening out there that aren't necessarily related to containers and boxes and racks and stacks and all of that. And so I think we're going to start to explore some of those things,
Mm-hmm.
within the alliance. Start to explore concepts like automation and AI and ML. How do these things apply? How can I make my workflow smarter? Why should I wait for somebody to find a problem, uh, create a ServiceNow ticket, which gets answered
Mm-hmm.
in a queue, which gets, why can't I just automatically create the ticket when there's an
Right.
issue that hits a certain data threshold? So,
Yes.
maybe we'll be exploring some of those options, but all of our working groups right now are engaged on projects. So we have a huge pipeline of documents and projects for this year. Everything ranging from best practices for player security to APIs for our open caching initiative. So we have a number of open caching APIs that are actually being coded by our
Mm-hmm.
member companies in our labs initiative. So there's a lot going on. At the end of the day, the key word for us is interoperability. Right? We need solutions that don't lock streaming providers into a certain way to do something. They can quickly and easily move, and then at the same time data is easily shared between those components, so that an end-to-end monitoring framework, for example, which is something that our QoE group published last year, can be applied, and you don't have to rip it and replace it every time you've got new technology. So there's a lot of these projects that we're working on all follow along that the pathway of interoperability.
I think that's one, that's a lot, and two, it's exciting,
Yeah,
right?
there's a lot.
I take that, I say that, and I really, I think from a technology perspective, just speaking from purely from my background with the technology industry and where you're coming from, is the innovation, right? And I think that there's a lot of people that use the word cloud, but what I think in the early days of the cloud, we talked about that technology. What does that really mean, right? And how
Yep.
does that process work? I think at AWS reInvent, where you had people like Formula One coming in and saying they're using certain functions of the Lambda services and implementing that from a delivery perspective. Does that
Yeah.
provide better scale, right? What types of software as a service, and what does that mean? And I think that's a key question. A lot of people ask that question, right? Of if I go implement this, what does this mean? Are we really achieving? Is this really truly providing a better value, both from a consumer or the customer perspective, but at the same time from a provider perspective, we're ensuring that we provide better resiliency, but also we're on top of things. And I appreciate where you're coming from that.
Yeah, and the question too becomes is like, where is the edge? For example, is it in the
Yes.
fog, the mist? Like, is it down at the device in the consumer home?
Yeah.
We actually have a subgroup of open caching called Edge Storage, and they are working on a document right now of extending open caching into the home. So the idea is
Wow.
a device manufacturer or CPE manufacturer, maybe they put open caching storage nodes in your smart TV or your home gateway or
Right.
some NAS you can buy. And so suddenly the experience for watching content is so much better because it's pre-positioned in your house. Like, there's lots of, again, that AI ML recommendation stuff is
Mm-hmm.
working overtime to send you content that you might like. And so now when you hit that interface and it pops up, it's like, hey, we have this recommended show for you. And you're like, that looks awesome. I'm going to play that one. And it's not getting it from the internet. It's getting it from the device in your house because it's been pre-positioned there for you. So there's lots of exciting stuff looking at those new technologies. And the key for us is not about like, let's just start a group and start doing something.
Mm-hmm.
The first step is always like, what use cases are applicable? Because we've looked at blockchain and we actually have a member company, Alluvio, using blockchain as part of their sort of content delivery fabric. It's very innovative, but that's, one use case. And is it applicable to
Right.
every delivery opportunity? And then what are the other use cases? Can blockchain replace DRM? Can blockchain handle microtransactions for content? So it's we see these new technologies, and a lot of times our member companies bubble them up, such as with VR and XR,
Mm-hmm.
and we sometimes we'll spin up a study group just to let's learn more, let's publish a document of our learnings, and then maybe if there's a project we can go forward on that. Lots of stuff to
Absolutely.
do.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so as we kind of, and this has been fantastic, and I'm thinking of several things that are spinning into my head now because one, this is exciting. I think there's some cool, and I've seen some of the papers on the open caching and or some of the caching, kind of studies, if you will, which I think are very interesting from a storage perspective, and how that's embedded in certain types of smart TVs and those devices. So there's two parts of the there's the out coming from the outside. Are some of these published publicly once the papers are produced and everything? Is that something that people could get off the website and access?
Yes.
Or
So, yeah, the way our process works is all documents go through a member ratification process. It's a 3-stage process. Once a document's been ratified, it is now available to the public. So if you go to our website and underneath our technical work section, there's a document library link. That document library has two categories of documents: all the published documents, which anybody can download, and then
yes.
all of our documents that are in draft. So we're showing people what we're working on, but if you go to try to download it, it will kick over to our intranet where you need a username and password. So we show none of our draft materials until they've been ratified.
And then there's obviously which is fantastic. Okay, so you can go do that, and then if somebody is like in the streaming or video online space that maybe is a company or a technology company that is developing something in there, they can also, I guess, apply to become a member as well, correct? If they go to the website?
Yeah, it's not even an application process. So, we accept member companies. They simply have to fill out the application, or the application. It's really just the agreement. You fill out the agreement, you sign it, you send it to me, I sign it, send it back, and you're off into the races. A lot of times I do calls with companies to sort of help them understand about how they can participate or where it would be best for them to participate. But yeah, we're open to everybody in the ecosystem. I mean, we've already had 4 new companies join, in the month of January. We had almost 20 join last year. And so it's, the growth has been immense,
Sure.
even during that crazy pandemic. So yeah, we make it very easy for anybody to come and get involved and collaborate and help build those solutions.
And and Jason and his team, the scope of your effort is quite large because you're dealing with a lot of moving parts to this in terms of the members and things like that. I believe you guys also do some joint webinars with some of these companies that are I think published on LinkedIn or various sources off the website. You can hear from some of these member companies.
Yeah, so we do a monthly webinar series every year, and we put together topics that are interesting, and then we go into our member base and say, like, hey, are you interested in participating in this webinar? And so we do those. We publish those again. Those are all public. We video them, record them, put them on the website. Anybody can watch them. We also are starting to write blog posts as recaps of the webinar so people can get the quick salient points. We do a podcast. It's about once a month. I'd like it to be once a month, but unfortunately my schedule doesn't always allow it. So those are more focused on interesting discussions with either 1 or 2 people about a topic. So our first one was with Michelle Munson, the founder of Alluvio. And if you don't know who she is, I mean, she founded Aspera, super crazy smart, in the space. And we had a fantastic discussion about kind of like how Alluvio is breaking through, these traditional assumptions around content delivery. And then I just recorded one with Cinemedia and Theo on HESP, kind of giving people like, what is HESP? And why should you know about it? And so tell us more. So the podcasts are more like that. And then, we're also looking at a video series, kind of like a how-to technical series of, digging into engineers. We're probably going to launch that this year. And we've even talked about doing, like a streaming university where we can do some courses to help broadcast engineers transition to streaming. How do you apply those skills that you have that, are becoming less important because broadcast is, transition to IP and streaming.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm excited, and I think it's really encouraging. And yeah, so and I think and it's true. There's a lot of people that have been impacted by the pandemic, and so I would encourage everybody who's watching this recording to go check out the Streaming Video Alliance. Give us 1 or 2 or 3 items from this conversation that you learned from it, and let me know, and as well as Jason, let us know what you found insightful and valuable. Even if it's sometimes we talk about some of these terms and these acronyms and it may go over your head a little bit, that's okay. I've said that's okay, because the goal, the effort is to get immersed and kind of educated to the process, and you'll learn that as you go along. So I think 2021 is going to be an exciting year of where we can focus on tightening some things up, improving some capabilities and what we do, whatever the role may be. So share your comments with us. Jason, I want to thank you for your time today and really appreciate all the efforts you and the team are doing at the Streaming and Video Alliance, as well as the members that are involved in that process.
Thanks, John. Yeah, it's our members do all the heavy work, and so I'm always indebted to them and the time they give out of their schedules to really help everybody else in the industry. It's inspiring and humbling.
Absolutely, I agree. Absolutely. Well, everybody, stay safe, stay well. Talk to you in the next Chalk Talk session. Take care.